Level 83, Chords. Introducing the full bar. Soon you'll be learning chords like the B minor and the F sharp major chord. And both chords are going to require bar technique. And that's because each chord will require either 5 or 6 fretted strings while we only have 4 fingers. So that means one of these fingers are going to have to take on some extra responsibility. In the case of the B minor chord, that first finger is going to be required to play the A string and the little E string to get full coverage for that chord. And in the case of the F sharp major chord, we're going to need a full bar. And that's because the first finger is having to take on the big string, the B string, and the little E string to get full coverage of this 6-string fretted chord. Now, although bar chords are more difficult to play, the good news is that one shape with a bar chord yields 12 chords. So for example, the B minor moved up a half step becomes a C minor chord. And if we move that up a half step, it becomes a C sharp minor chord. And then you can move it up to a D minor chord. All these chords become available using one shape because of the bar. And in the case of the F sharp major chord, if we move that up a half step, it becomes a G major chord. Yes, we do play the G this way, but we can also play it this way. And if we move that up a half step, we gain access to G sharp major, and then we have A major, A sharp major, B major, and on and on and on until you run out of frets. So one shape yields 24 possible chords. Now that's efficiency. So with that being said, hopefully I've sold you on the idea of learning your bar chords. Now we're not going to be learning the B minor or the F sharp major in this lesson, but I am going to prepare you for those. In fact, this lesson will be more difficult than learning those two chords because in this lesson we're going to be using the first finger to bar all 6 strings. Just like that. We have no assistance from fingers 2, 3, and 4 like you would on the B minor. So your goal is to be able to take that one finger and play all 6 strings using the full bar. Let's get to work. Now, don't get scared off about learning bar chords. You've already done part of the legwork when learning the F major chord. And there you're using bar chord technique on the first 2 strings. So we're just going to carry that technique onto all 6 strings. Now there are 2 things that I need you to be aware of. One is neck angle, and then 2 is the position of the elbow. And I would recommend looking up the first 10 levels at Levels for Guitar, dealing with holding the guitar and fretting hand alignment. So with respect to holding the guitar, I would recommend classical style. And that's because it provides the steepest neck angle. And that's what you want. The idea is to get the finger parallel and as close to the fret as possible. That makes learning the bar chord much, much easier. If the neck angle is like this, look what it does to my alignment. It causes my finger to run opposite of the fret. But by tilting the neck angle like this, I get that alignment. My finger is right up against the fret and running parallel to the fret. 2, the elbow position. We want the elbow in. Watch as my elbow goes out. It pulls my finger away from the frets. So in order to get the finger parallel and close to the frets, you have to bring that elbow in, and that's going to help make your bar chord much, much easier. So 1, holding the guitar correctly, and then 2, positioning that elbow so that you can align that finger against the fret and as close to the fret as possible. All right, we've established a steep neck angle, our elbow's in, and now we're going to talk about finger position. I'm going to push up against these strings really hard so that you can see the lines created on the side of my finger. Notice that I'm pushing right up against the bone on the corner of the finger, not the fat part, but on the corner right there. And I get that by turning the finger on the side, and this is going to make barring much easier. 1, you don't have the fat part pushing up against the string. If you put the fat part on the string, the fat will absorb into the string, making it harder to push. But if you turn it on its side and you have the bone against the string, it's much easier to get pressure without having to push so hard. So try to turn that in. If you're holding the guitar correctly and your elbow's in, this should happen naturally. Now the other benefit is separation between the first finger or the bar and the remainder of the fingers. When learning the B minor chord, you're going to need these other fingers up against their respective frets. So you want a good gap between fingers 1 and the rest of the fingers. And you get that by turning on the side of the finger like this. We have a nice gap here. If I turn it on this part, it just makes it much more difficult to stretch. But if I keep it on its side, I can stretch pretty far between the first finger and the remainder of the hand. It's going to make playing bar chords much easier. At this point, most of you cannot get sound out of all 6 strings when performing a bar, but I'm going to show you a pathway to get there. And all this starts with a single string. We're not going to eat the whole bar in one setting. We'll start with 1 string, and I would recommend the 2nd fret on the little E string. You should be able to get that note. But remember all the things that we talked about earlier, and that's keeping the finger on its side and close to the frets. Also, your hand position. When we go back to the fundamentals at levels for guitar, we want to keep a nice straight wrist. Remember, a straight wrist is a strong hand. So you don't want your thumb too high or too low or too far to the left or to the right. We want to keep the thumb in the center of the hand. And then we check that note. And if you can get sound, you've graduated. Next, you move to 2 strings. And you're already doing this with your F major chord. So if you've completed that level, then you're more than prepared for barring 2 strings at a time. Now I want you to remember that tired hands are no good when learning bar technique. So what I would recommend is before playing the bar, lightly touch the strings, evaluate your technique, and when you're ready, press, check your notes, and then relax. I don't want you pushing the notes more than 5 seconds at a time. That's going to wear you out and make it more difficult to learn these chords. Tired hands are no good. But once you can play 2 strings at a time, you graduate to 3 strings. You evaluate your technique, you make sure that you're lined up against the fret and on the side of the finger, and when you're ready, you press and you check your notes. Don't spend so much time on there. Relax and reevaluate. If you can get all 3 strings, you guessed it, move on to the 4th string. Check your technique. When you're ready, you press, check your notes, and relax and evaluate. If you can't get all those notes, then you want to start all over and just work your way up to those strings for that day. Over time, you're going to get stronger. But once you can get 4 strings, you move to 5 strings. You check your technique, and when you're ready, you squeeze and check your notes. And relax. Give yourself a good 10 to 20 seconds between each press, and then if you can get all 5 strings, then you move to the 6th string. Now you're at the full bar. You check your technique. You make sure you're on the side of the finger up against the fret, and then when you're ready, you push, and you check all your notes, and then you relax. Keep doing that. Don't expect to get all 6 strings within the first week. This will take time, but you just start on the 1st string and you gradually work your way up to all 6 strings, and before you know it, you're going to be playing these notes. Everybody improves on this exercise. Once you've mastered all 6 strings, you can move into higher positions. You're going to find the higher up the neck you go, the more difficult it is to produce the bar because the strings are higher off the fretboard. I also find that it's very difficult on some guitars to produce the full bar at the 1st fret, and that has to do with the nut here towards the back of the fretboard. But I'll leave that up to you to investigate, and I'm going to get to work on your next lesson in level 84. I'll see you there.